Today, we are going to break down Black Lion in depth. Yes, completely. Maybe you have been watching on this channel already some Black Lion videos. All of them are very old. This is very improved version, and it's also more simplified, so you are not overwhelming yourself with so many different variations. On every variation, you have one quick line to learn, and you are relying on more practical approach instead of memorization the lines. So we're gonna point out many different plans. What you need to know about Black Lion if you're new to this in this space of the opening, that Black Lion starts from the fill defense. So, for example, from the very beginning of the opening, your setup is to go d6, d4, knight f6, and then you're placing your knight on d7. For those who wanna avoid the variations with g4, which is shear of gambit, you can play immediately the move e5. But with the move e5, you are allowing your opponent to enter this middle game without queens, and if you like endgames, you can enter this. If you actually want to accept the shear of gambit, which I can recommend you because it's not something too much dangerous, you can play the move knight to b7. And now after knight f3, we play the move e5. This is our standard setup, and after this, we're gonna reach something like this during the game. So I wanna start from the ideas that you must know in these structures. What is the idea generally of Black Lion? Your knight from d7 comes to f8, and now you prepare the push of g5. So for example, if white plays something like rook e1, then you play the move g5. Let's say develop the move bishop to e3, and now you hit the pawn and knight together. The importance of Black Lion is to make your opponent play the move h3. And why many people are playing the move h3? It's because they want to stop the move knight g4. So this is actually covering the attack on the bishop on e3. If they don't play h3, we are not going for this plan, and I can recommend you something more stable. This thing is called Tame Lion, and I think it's very well explained in some courses online. So this is more like a risky option, and it's very nice already because after g4, if they take you, for example, you're going to take back with the bishop. Bishop will maintain the pin on the queen end, followed by rook g8. You're going to have a very nice position. For example, when it comes to something like this, if white decides to take in the middle, you of course always take back with a pawn. If you have your knight on d7, you do not retake with your knight because you want to keep your knight maneuver to go on g6 and later to go on f4. If white want to avoid the g4 move, for example, that's usually how they can try respond and maybe to play f3. This knight suddenly becomes a very strange and passive piece, and whenever they jump here, for example after knight g6, knight g4, whenever they offer trade, this is already bad for white because we are going to trade our light square bishop for that knight. When they take back, we're going to plant our knight on f4. And why we are trading the bishop for the knight? Because we know bishop is usually better in these positions since he's controlling this diagonal. It's because now knights are more flexible and they're already in the place where you can actually start attacking your opponent. For example, after the next move h5, you're going to break up completely the h line, and at some point, if you manage somehow this rook to double up on the h line, this will be game over for sure. Or for example, your queen can go from c8 to the king side and help your attack. That's actually how the Black Lion looks, the moment of Black Lion happening in the game. But let's now break it down from the theory and how you are achieving these positions. So you're starting with a move d6, the fill defense, knight c3, knight bd7. Your opponent, usually they go knight f3. This is one of the most popular setups. e5, and now here there's many moves, of course, for white. They can play bishop e2. There is some rook g1 move, very popular recently. Bishop e3 is nothing special, but it also exists. Okay, taking doesn't go well here. Black is always fine because it's also reopening the diagonal. The white is actually helping you if they decide to take like this and then to go later on b4 when like already black equalized. So you need to know that in Black Lion and Philidor, white is always having some edge and black is waiting his moment to proceed with some pressure and break in the middle. If they play h3, like people are usually doing and going castles, you can implement this strategy of h6, g5, the risky version of black clan. And if they don't play h3, you can keep playing solid with castles, bishop e7, c6, and we will see how that variation looks like. People are playing bishop c4, clearly putting out the bishop here, bishop e7. We need to play that move before c6, because if we play c6, they have knight g5. So that's very important to remember. Castles, now c6, and your intentions are also to go b5 at some point, because your main plan is not just to go h6, g5 to achieve black clan setup. Your intentions are also to go maybe b5, b4. That's why white is playing the move a4. And now here we reach possibility of going h6, but it's even more flexible to start with the move queen to c7. As you see, evaluation bar is giving some solid edge for white, but this is all engine evaluation. In practice, this is very well-known situation in the theory. And now in this point, white has like many different moves how to play, and one of them is the move h3. After the move h3, your opponent tell you that he want to play maybe move bishop e3 and he want to stop knight g4. That's his intentions. At this point, we start with the move h6, which is not the best move, of course, but makes a lot of provocations to your opponent. For example, now at this point, if they play, like we said in the game, in the previous example, something like rook to e1, we play move g5. And now we control this square, and we will be ready for this specific maneuver with our pieces. Bishop e3 is the nice setup if you go the move knight to f8. This is already disaster. So we need to remember that this move is something we want to avoid playing, because they have this following tactic: takes, takes, and knight takes e5, queen takes e5, and then bishop d4. After this, many of you maybe already know this, white is absolutely winning here. This sacrifice is eligible completely, and now you will have many problems on the diagonals and also in the center. Black is kind of collapsing here. So instead of the move knight f8, which is here mistake, your plan, but it's mistake, you don't want to go after this. Instead of that, you play the move g4. It's a perfect moment to break on this side of the board, and like if they capture, for example, h-tech captures, now you capture back with your knight, and you're targeting this bishop. Let's say they play queen d2, and okay, you can eliminate the bishop. You can also start with rook g8, for example, slowly. Then after that, this knight will follow up here, maybe later on h5. The diagonal is going to get open, and suddenly we have a lot of pressure on the king side, and they are going to be in a very big trouble. So that's if they go and play h3 immediately. If they play something like knight h2 here, which I explained, at this point you can also take and then plant your knight in the middle. Like let's say after queen takes, you can go knight e5 here, but there is an also option to go rook g8. Because now the following move just doesn't exist. You can just take, and then plant your knight on e5. So this trade is very well, good for black, while white is struggling how to protect his pieces. Also, f3 is just making more dark square weaknesses, so this is not great thing for white. At this point, after rook g8, I believe he needs to bring back bishop, so he can now control these light squares. You will play knight e5, and since you have a perfect control on the dark squares, your intentions are very clear. You want to push g4. You have a bishop open, your knights are ready for this. At some point, if you like the endgame, you can maybe try queen b6, offering some trades, put a pressure on the queen on b2 also together, and black is fine. Maybe white has some engine evaluation edge, let's say like that, but black is totally fine. And you can also go for the move knight e5 here and target the bishop immediately. When they bring bishop back, you can transpose into this position just, and at the next point and the next moves, you are ready to break with g4. For example, after a5, g4, h takes, knight from f takes, since we want to open up this bishop. And like I think f4 is something they want to avoid playing, because maybe you have something like bishop f6, sacrificing this knight, because after take, double attack, and your opponent is in a big trouble. So this move is actually a decent move. brilliant move in this position, so we can put on the mark. Yeah, Black is doing amazing job here, so I believe that Rook e1 h3 idea, it's not going very well together, you know. So instead of that, I think it's much better maybe for White to try something like Queen e2. It's a very logical move. The clear point is to bring the Rook to d1 and make some operations on the d line, at the same time planning maybe to take. At that point, we continue with our plan. We go the move h6, and let's say if they play something like Rook to d1, g5 you can play, of course. It's a little bit risky version because now the h3 is not played, so the attack is not going the well like we had it in the previous example. Like if they have h3, Black line works very well. If they don't have h3, then you can still go for g5, but you know you're risking a little bit because you don't have this hook, which is really important to break the g line. Bishop to e3, and now after rook g8, you're still supporting your pieces. Yeah, evaluation is giving some sort of edge to white, but you know we are planning to start moving these pawns quite fast. And of course, if you don't want to play like this, if they don't have h3, you will see the version of how to play slowly without this attack. And for example, a5, at this point we can take, and now plan the knight on e5. So very typical plan. When the bishop moves back, h5 is starting, rolling. So, you know, to be honest, no matter what engine says here, I think that we have a clear plan of g4 and maybe knight f3 sacrifice, since you have a lot of pressure. On the other side, I think that king is in the center, very safe, and I think this is a great weapon in the blitz rapid games where you're putting a ton of pressure on your opponent to spend and burn time. So yeah, that's if they go with the planned rook d1. If they play, queen e2, rook d1, if they go with something like bishop a2, at some point you can also choose to go a6 and b5. That's why they're saving this bishop. And all of these plans for white can be combined, and they can play even bishop a2, queen e2, rook d1 at the same time. They can also include after bishop e2, h3, and rook e1. So all of this is possible, but you know what is worse for white? To play h3 and something like this together, because this just gives so much credits to our attack. After this, we're gonna anyway plan the move h6. At this point, if they take, we take back with our pawn, always with our pawn. We do not take with the knight. And yeah, they have this nice move knight h4, which I want to tell you that this move is actually so strong, and they can play whenever you play the move h6. The point of this move, they want to go here. And if you go something like knight f8, they will try maybe to go knight to f5. And when you take, they will take back. But at this point, you now just made your knight very passive. So you need actually to come back here or to go here and here. That's possible. Later on, your plan is to go castle, to bring your rook to d8. You don't have bishop pair, but you don't have problems. Your bishop get out, you have this pleasant diagonal, so this is also very possible. On the other side, you can go knight c5, on different side of the board, knight c5. And after they go here, now it's not the same, because after take, knight is actually better on c5 than on f8. For example, castles, they play bishop e3, and now at this point, since you have a very nice control over the dark squares, why not to take some light square control with e4 to open up this diagonal, potential knight regroupment again to e5 later. You know, also queen e5 and then queen takes f5 is possible. Knight g4, if the queen moves from this diagonal, is very, very possible idea, because this attacks completely the king side, you know, and that's generally what we want to play here. This is our main strategy. So at this point, if they go something like bishop g5, something you should know also is now it's the right time for the move h6. It's a very right time for the move h6, because bishop actually gave you tempo to play this move, and if they decide to go on h4, this is already a nice thing that we can get already g5 with tempo to attack the bishop. So when you go knight f8, you're planning to proceed with g5 and then followed by knight g6, you need some protection on the e5 pawn. So that's why white, before you push g5, already plays the bishop here, so they actually stop you of g5 because now your pawn is hanging. They have enough attackers. So you don't go now with g5, but you plant your knight on g6. And after they play something like h3, because you're also threatening some move like a knight h5 to eliminate their strong bishop, you will now just castle. So at this point, we cannot risk and go and plant something like g5 because they have enough pressure on e5, and now we, at this point, continue in the version that is called tame lion. So we then later go maybe b6, and then bishop b7, maybe rook from f to d8, at some point a6, b5, and that's how we can play this game. And now we're gonna take a look how the tame lion looks. So you just play very much the same as the risky lion, but you are not pushing the move. You're not pushing on the other side with h6 and g5. So you're kind of playing slowly. Let's say they play rook e1 as usual, and now you can castle. So there is nothing wrong with castling. There is nothing wrong with risky lion. But if you want to play risky lion, to remind you, they need to have h3, so your risky lion is actually more efficient. After a5, a key moment where they're trying to take more space and stop you of playing maybe the move b6. This is also a very nice regrouping and maneuvering square for the knight on b6. It's putting some pressure on this square and also opening up our bishop. At this point, we want to move the rook on b8, and now, because we move, we are planning to push something like b5 or b6. That's our first strategy. That's why many players would retreat this bishop, and now we are not waiting for anything. We proceed with our queenside expansion of pawns, getting more space, and also offering the trade. Of course, they will accept the trade, since if they don't accept the trade, this pawn is later a very weak pawn, and in most of cases, we can take this pawn in some endgames because it's becoming more soft. So they should take, we take back, of course, with pawn, keeping our structure very solid. And now let's say, what about they play now h3 and they want to play now bishop to e3. We get more space with b5. Let's say bishop to e3, and now we can even get more space with b4. This is also guaranteed as the pawn on e4 here, and they are struggling how to defend their position because also later maybe bishop b7 or knight b6, knight c4, this bishop can come here. We have very nice protection on e5, and that's how you play the tame lion version. If they go for rook e1, the best way how to play against castling is to go b3. And b3 is very thematic. The point is to go bishop b2 and then to focus on e5 pawn. At this point, we of course castling. They go bishop b2. We play b6, and we are trying to set up something like this anyway to get some space on the queen side. Rook e1, a6, let's say queen d2, bishop b7, and finally, after we achieve our development with minor pieces, we would like to make some breaks. At this point, b5 is maybe not the best, because they can start regrouping the knight and then later hit with c4. Maybe instead of that, try to prepare, like rook f8, then knight f8, then knight g6, regrouping the knight, and you are not in rush. Then maybe later this rook can come here, and even some d5 breaks can exist. Very nice version for us. This is tame lion, and if you want to stay solid without risk, of course, even if they play move h3, you can play this kind of version of Philidor. But if they play h3, we can hit them with h6, g5. Okay, there is another version. If they go something like bishop e2, I think that's a little bit passive. I think that bishop is much better to stay at least in some diagonal and take some sort of advantage and space. Then you just play normally bishop to e7. When they go castle, for example, you can play c6, continue with your normal plan. a4, standard move, stopping some b5 in future. You play queen c7. And now if they go even h3, the thing is now that h6 and g5 are even more riskier, because bishop is not on c4, bishop is here. So in the future, when they play knight h2, they're going to have very big control here, and maybe it's a little bit riskier to go with this plan. So I'm recommending on bishop e2 to stay solid and go castles. After that, let's say rook e1, we play again same plan b6. Even if they get out with bishop, you just stay solid, play a6, bishop b7, or you can go something like rook e8. And if they make some break like this, you can just take, they will take, and now play bishop b7, hit their opponent. Maybe you are threatening already some captures in the middle with this little discoveries. Also, knight c5 is in the way. C line just get open, and we have a ton of pleasant things in this moment, in this line bishop e2. I think bishop e2 is misplaced. I think that this bishop is much better to stay on this diagonal on b3 and covering the d5 square. So generally they have they have more ideas when the bishop is on this diagonal than when the bishop is here and blocking the rook. Okay, now the caveman and the late caveman, something you should know in this position, that your opponent can sacrifice the bishop. It's a very important sacrifice to remember. This is not naive, and you need to be careful because you can lose the game so quick. You need to take this, and after knight g5, the only move is to go king g8. Otherwise, if you go here and here, you can trap your queen, or they're gonna make you a fork. So you need to be careful about that. That's why king g8, knight goes to e6, queen goes to e8, and after knight takes e7, queen goes to g6 and providing additional counterplay. I won many games like this because people are thinking that black will blunder and black doesn't know how to react on this interesting sacrifice. But just to tell you, this is possible to play. You see that black is not so much better, but it's better. He got some edge because after knight takes a8, we take on g2. Rook f1 is practically the only move. And now at this point, we just take on d4. The threat is knight e5 and then knight f3. This is our follow-up. Queen takes d4 is kind of only move. And then we go knight e5. Big threat here. To be honest, the only move that saves white here is the move f3. And that's something white should know. Every other move, such as, for example, f4, leads to more complications after knight from f to g4. Because then bishop h4 is on the way, making the check, king will need to move, and then our rook on f1 will be gone sooner or later. If they try some check, you can just retreat your knight to d7, to f7, and then follow up with the move bishop h4 and closely make this closure of this game. So, this line is very forced, and it's not hard to memorize. It's very forcing. You just go with your queen out. There is an option for them to castle here. At this point, you need to play move rook b8 to save your rook. And now if they hit you with this, you just say, okay, I don't care, I play h6, because f5 is nothing. You just drop your queen back and say thank you. You closed the middle. I will go king h7. Later on, I will try to play b6, bishop b7. We are just clear piece up. And we just need to trade some pieces and to get more space in the middle to make some breaks, and that's how we continue this game. By the way, this file, this opening repertoire, you can find on my website. I'm gonna put link down below. So if you wanna buy this PGN, you're gonna have the chance. I'm gonna give some very good discount for you, since I didn't record a Black Lion video for a long time, and you can have a very nice repertoire for the Black Lion. Okay, let's continue. The delayed caveman is also very possible. So that's actually happening after they play knight g5. And when you go castle, now bishop takes f7, rook takes f7, and now knight e6. The difference here, white is actually more stable. This is very possible to happen in the game. Queen e8, knight takes e7. You need to go back since now queen g6 is not able because of rook on f7. You need to go back here, and after knight takes rook, now you play b6, or even what is much better now is to play b5. But b6 is very well known, everyone is playing b6, but b5 is even better. What's the point? You're actually offering this pawn, but after queen a5 check, when the knight goes back, you have knight takes e4, opening up the line for your rook and maintaining the pin. This knight is also stuck, so next move could be also later bishop e7. At some point you also have bishop a6 to make your opponent frozen in the middle, I mean his king. And if you want to play more static, you can play b6. When they take in the middle, of course you take back with knight, and after something like bishop b7, you're about to take this knight. At some point, they will sacrifice the knight for the pawn, and you will have two minor pieces for the rook. This position is, to be honest, not so much easy to play because your queen is not providing additional counterplay. Moving the knight back is possible, but bishop g4 here is even much better. Because after bishop g4, queen needs to move, let's say queen to d4, and now knight c6, hitting the queen with tempo, threatening to take the knight on the next move. Even after queen c4, queen takes a8, let's say they will castle, and now you can continue slowly. You need to break up this pin, maybe knight a5, something like that, opening your queen, and removing the queen from this diagonal, annoying diagonal, so you can actually move your rook back or maybe develop like this. Yeah, this is double edge, but you see, according to the engine, that black is here kind of better. That's about the Caveman and the late Caveman. On the other side, we also got something like g4, which become very popular nowadays. So after the move knight bd7 here, g4 move. This is very popular, and you know, at this point we need to play move h6 because they're threatening g5. And now h3, this is the setup they want to make. Later bishop g2, knight g2, castle, and to push f4 and to get even more space on the other side of the board. So now at this point we are not playing anymore the same this opening. We need some quick counterplay, as people are usually doing. When someone push on the side, we need to provide a counterplay in the center or on the queen side. So that's why after we go the move e5, well, let's say they play knight g2, now b5. It's a very strong move because the point of this sacrifice is when they take, you take on e4, get even more space. Let's say bishop g2, bishop b7 protects the knight, and it's a very double edge since they took so many space with their opponents. We need to provide counterplay, and that's why b5 is so strong, threatening also b4 to move the knight from the c3 so we can actually take this pawn. If they play something like a3, which is also one of the moves that holds the b4, now we just continue statically and protect this pawn on b5 by something like c6 or maybe a6. Maybe a6 is even better because after something like bishop g2, we have bishop e7 and we do not close the diagonal for this bishop. But okay, c6 is in our repertoire. Bishop g2, a5 even getting more space, let's say. After castles, bishop goes to a6, and we are preparing counterplay on the queen side. That's why we need to play energetic. We cannot stay and wait for our opponent to build up the same strategy against us. So you see he's pushing g4, one on knight g3, and then to jump on f5. At this point, kind of using the same strategy of the risky lion. That's why we need counterplay, and we need some pawn storm on the other side. Yeah, for example, here if they play something like b4, you know, to be honest, here you can just ignore that, even maybe bring your bishop back, like bishop e7. You can also just continue developing normally. f4 shouldn't scare you that much because you know that anyway your point is to open up these diagonals. So if he wanna voluntarily take everything on e5, you will like it because your knight will replace these pawns in the center. If they go something more like normal, like g3, it's very possible. I saw many players are playing like this. Strategically, you go for e5, they bring the knight here, play bishop e7, everything normal, c6 as usual. a4 is usually stopping the plan on b5, one of the useful moves for white that you should remember. And now you go b6, so remember the strategy, bishop e7, queen c7, a6, b5, that's our idea. Castles, a6, h3, and after h3, they wanted this, and they wanted this. So they want to kind of transpose into something we just looked. So that's why I recommend the move h5. Stopping the move g4, and continuing our operations on the other side of the board. For example, if they hit immediately with f4, you can just ignore and go castles. Let's say bishop to e3, for example, bishop e7. Queen to d2, everything looks very normal, but now rook e8. So do not be scared about taking. I told you that your knight will replace these pawns. And do not be scared about closing, because they will never be able to break with g4 since you have h5. It's a very powerful control setup, this knight and this pawn. g4 square, and on the other side you will push slowly b5 and then later b4. Maybe at some point you will have this after you retreat your bishop, so your rook actually supports the middle and get very well organized center with all of these pieces waiting for some break. Like knight is just wondering when is the time to start and get into the position. Um, so there is also another options to go with something like people are playing a lot of bishop e3, and then after e5 they go f3. This is something I've seen myself many times when I played like Lion myself. At this point you need fast counterplay because you see what is his strategy. He want to go queen d2 and go alongside castles. At this point we go c6, and after queen d2 we slowly prepare our progress with b5. You can also maybe go immediately b5. That's maybe actually much better instead of queen c7. But if you want to see and stay flexible on what your opponent is planning, you can go queen c7. And if they go something like g4, firstly h6 to stop them, and after castles, you're ready for move b5. Yeah, this is just the strategy behind Tame Lion to get more space there. Let's say king b1, we play b4 of course, and now if the knight goes on a4, we can maybe strike in the middle like d5, for example. If they go knight from c to e2 like this, we can again strike with d5 because the whole point is to break something in the center. On the other hand, if you choose the strategy of immediately going b5 because you're seeing what your opponent is playing, let's say they go castle, bishop e7 for example, and when they go g4, we go castle short. After g5, knight goes on h5 to control f4 square, and when they develop, here we are b4, like if knight a4, queen a5, and they're already in a big trouble because rook b8, knight b6 is on the way, and bishop will replace this spot here and make a lot of troubles to your opponent on the queen side. And the last thing what I want to show you is if they go with the plan of bishop d3. Bishop d3, the plan is to go c3 and then knight f3 castles and to play like this, bishop e3, knight bd2. That's the plan behind move bishop d3. In that case, you need to hit with e5 before knight bd7, because if you go knight bd7 here, maybe your opponent can even go something like f4 and white to allow him this variation. So we go e5, and after c3, we just start again building up our strategy for the maybe break again on the other side of the board. Black Lion now doesn't work, but we are going to set up our pieces according to the book theory. Knight bd7 as usual, let's say castles queen c7. They want to stop knight g4 anyway after bishop e3. You can try here to go Black Lion again, but I'm not recommending. It's up to you. If you think that it's a bullet game and you are ready for this, you can again try to hit it. Bishop e7, rook e1, you go castle, a4 gaining more space on the other side, but now we play b6, and our plan is again same, bishop e7, a6, b5, rook e8, knight f8, knight g6, transposing too many of different variations. To be honest, I think that this knight belongs to c3, so when they push in this position d5, they have control over these two squares. But okay, now knight will come here, of course. This is another possibility, but we are just in time. After knight c4, we can play bishop to f8, and we protect the e5 square for future actions. And yeah, more of the sidelines are staying in the PGN file that you can find on my website. I'm going to put the link down there in the description so you can check it out. Everything that I mentioned today is written in that file. So if you want to have PGN file, you can visit my website and check it out. If you don't like the PGN file, you have a 7 days money back guarantee. Do not worry about that. I don't want to leave you satisfied, but I think that with this repertoire of Black Lion, you can have very stable openings as black, specifically against the first move e4. I hope you enjoyed, and if you like this video, you can check this one here, and I'll see you next time.